welcome to the RTO show. I'm your host, Pete Chow. Today, got a special guest in the studio. Before we get to that, before we get to Jeff Smith, listen, I need you guys to understand we are here for you, but we can only be there for you if you subscribe. Make sure you hit that notification bell so you know what's going on, and hit up the website at the RTOshowpodcast.com and check out my newsletter. You want to be a part of that because it's everything that we talk about on there is not covered on the podcast. So it's something new to you. So now, today, Jeff Smith's in the studio, which we don't have many studio guests. Usually you guys are, I'm talking to somebody online. In the studio today to talk about an amazing career. Jeff, we met a couple years ago on a couple of things, and I think it was in DC, right? On one of the LegCon.
I believe so, or one of the many shows.
One of the many shows that we do. And listen, Jeff Smith's been on the show once before with Matt. We were talking about things that were happening in New York. As much as is going on in New York, Jeff's got going on in his life. Let me tell you, business entrepreneur, way concerned with what's going on in New York. Guys, if you don't know, we'll talk about that later. Opening up businesses, hometown rent to own, now up to 5 locations. Congratulations on that. I know that you guys had a recent one. I think every time that I turn on the newsletter, I see Jeff's name in the A-Pro newsletter. It was actually going to be in our newsletter as well. So you're going to have another newsletter you're going to be in.
Wow.
But I mean, he's doing a great job. So let's get into it really quick as we go through. Let's talk about a couple things real quick. Number 1, 5 stores.
Yes, sir.
So you were working in the same, you were working for House of Television under Randy O'Tanner in the same town that you opened up a hometown rent to own.
Correct.
How did that feel?
This last acquisition actually was probably the most special one to me, just because I ran a store in Warren, Pennsylvania for 4 years for Randy and Maury O'Tander, who Matt and I will reference to anybody we talk to about the impact they had on our lives and our careers. Yeah, from like 2002, I believe, to 2006, I was a store manager there before I left to go to a place called Blockbuster Video that maybe some of the younger folks may not be familiar with, but I can get into that later on if you'd like. But yeah, this one's got a sentimental place for me, especially.
I can only imagine what it's like. So last night we're going to the game. We're actually at a suite and we're watching the Rays game, and I hear about Randyisms and all this stuff came out earlier today, and we're talking about a little bit as you're going through and you're growing, right? You've got this experience, you're kind of learning, taking in, sponging it up. What made you decide, number 1, to start, the business with hometown rent to own with Matt? And then how much did Randy play in that role of yours?
Man, I would say he did 100%. And Matt would concur. I actually didn't help found hometown. That was Matt and Chris. There's a long story behind that. Back in 2014, as Randy and Mo were kind of exiting the business to someone that they had sold to, they kind of funded Matt and an ex-partner that's no longer with us to open a store. And that was the case from 2014 to 2021. Fast forward to 2021, I had left House of Television in 2019, just with some, I would say, disagreement with philosophies of the new regime at House of Television. It just wasn't the same once Randy and Mo, faded off into the distance.
Yeah.
So I had left in 2019. I was actually a systems administrator for a pharmacy. They had 6 pharmacies nationwide. It was a pretty cool gig, actually, because my background's in IT. So I was overseeing like 150 computers, servers, VoIP, just tons of cool stuff. And I was doing it all from a little office in Jamestown. So fast forward from 2019 to 2021, Matt and Chris approached me. Not Chris, that's our district manager, but a different Chris that's no longer with us, approached me about, they said, hey, we're looking to grow. We want to open a store in Jamestown. We'd like you to come on board. And I was like, nah, I got out of the game a long time ago. And I hadn't actually run a store since 2006. Started in the business in 2000 as an account manager doing deliveries. Came in from the hospitality industry, actually. I was a rooms division manager for Holiday Inn in Jamestown. So I was in charge of like the front desk and stuff. So I went from wearing a 3-piece suit to lugging furniture up 3 flights of stairs, which was quite a change.
That'll change it.
Yeah, but I got tired of the hours. If anybody's worked hospitality or restaurant, and Matt comes from the restaurant background too, so I think a lot of people in RTO kind of have that. And Randy Mo even said like they like to hire fast food people because they knew how to like hustle and how to work and get things done. But I ended up starting at $8 an hour in 2000 and worked my way up to store manager very quickly. In 2006, I had a district manager that was not so great to work for. which is a part of the reason I think we focus so heavily on culture now. It's nobody, we all have to, kind of one of my philosophies, one of the things I'm famous for saying is like, we all got to work. We all got to have a job. Like, let's just try to make the most of it and make the best of it. Like,
well, culture is so huge. Culture is huge. You know, guys, talking about a couple things, there was two things that you mentioned. The first thing is Michael Bennett is known for talking with the guys at Buddies and always started on a truck, right? It started on a truck. That was that if you didn't know how to be in rent to own, you had to start on a truck. And it creates this vibe. It creates the understanding. It creates the knowledge of understanding the customer, the relationships, and how things get done from the bottom end to the top end. The other thing that you said was the hospitality business. And part of what conversations last night, you were talking to Tracy, Matt's point, a part of it. The hospitality business is hard, but it's based on two things: a lot of work and the reality that you have in between you and your customer. And at that point in time, when you're having that and that culture, that relationship of they keep coming back, that repeat business is what we live on. That is literally what we live on. So it's great you say that, because we were just talking about that last night. And so as this comes on, you're reaching, they say, hey, you want to come on, you want to try this. This was the beginning of your entrepreneurial phase.
So to speak. I actually turned them down because they wanted me to run a store. And that's, like I said, 2006 was the last time I went to work for Blockbuster. And at that time is when my IT career kind of began, so to speak. I was able to go to school during the day because at Blockbuster Video, you had to work what were called peak shifts because everybody's in your store on Friday and Saturday nights. So they want you pushing the popcorn and, peddling candy and all the things that they had probably like a 400% margin on, like the $8 buckets of popcorn, for just conveniently located in a bucket.
Anthony, be kind and rewind. Make sure. Oh God, you remember that? They was always going to hit us up with that. It was always one of those things. I probably got charged way too much.
The late fees. Yeah.
Oh yeah, I
Me
did
too. I probably still have some.
Kind of like Columbia House.
Yeah, right. You get it for a penny, and then you end up owing like $35. Yeah, it was my fault.
Yeah. But so that led me to my IT career, and I had been IT for Randy and Mo, which gave me a great foundation for being an owner. Honestly, I had no idea at the time. I went back to 2006, 2008 was my short time with Blockbuster. Went back to House of TV 2008 to 2019. That gives me about 20 years in the industry. But I'm self-aware. I'll say that. I don't have a backbone. I can't tell people like pay me now or I'm kicking your door in. I'm gullible. I'm naive. People tell me like 3 times their grandma died. Oh, sorry, you can pay me next week.
It's funny. Out of everybody that I've talked to, I've never had anybody admit that on this show.
Yeah,
but that speaks to who you are, because that's not easy to say, right?
I'm not that guy, and and my staff and Matt's probably going to kill me for saying this too, but when people push me for sales, I'm just like, it turns me off. So I can't, like, how can I, ask my employees, like, hey, hound, it's like, just people respond differently. And I'm not a pushy salesperson. So I didn't thrive in that environment, we'll say. So IT was my thing. And then when they approached me about buying I know I'm taking a long way to get to this answer, but they wanted me to run a store, and I said no. And then they called Randy and said that I declined. And Randy said, you guys got to do whatever you need to do to get Jeff in the business. And then a week later, Matt and our ex-partner and I sat down and they talked to me about buying into the business, and then they had my attention. So that's kind of a long way to getting to the answer.
Listen, it's backstory onto how you actually got there, because it's important a lot of times that people join the business. They don't know where they're going, right? They don't know if it's a career. They know it's a job. They know they're going to get paid at the end of the week. And that's the most important thing. We're feeding a family. And then as people stay longer in rent to own, they figure out it's a relationship business. And I'm not going to say that it's even half. There is a percentage, and it might be more than half. It might be 60, 70% that fall off. They just don't get it. But when rent to own clicks, it's in your blood. So they come to you with this idea because you've done things. Now IT is starting to make a lot more sense, because you got a lot of stuff going on in the background. If you guys don't know, there's a lot of stuff going on in Jeff's background, and we'll talk about it. So from there, they give you this opportunity. So is it like, and I don't need to know the exact numbers, but usually when it comes with, with those opportunities, they'll say, hey, you need some type of investment. Most people aren't ready for that.
And I wasn't. Our initial conversation was, a small buy-in at 10%, but some extenuating circumstances came up, and we had to kind of fast forward the payment plan, so to speak. So it was like, we need the money all at once instead of over time, which I was okay with. I refinanced my house and made some other arrangements, but I kind of countered to that and said, if I'm going to be risking everything, because they only had the one store, mind you, so there was no guarantees of any success for any of us. But if I'm going to buy in and be a big part of this, then I need to be a third. So it went from 45, 45, 10 to 33 and a third times 3. And do
you hear that, Anthony? I don't really know how to tell people that they got to pay me, and I don't know how to push for sales, but I know how to ask for 33%. That's where the businessman comes from, right? And that's where. But listen, you got to know your role, right? And if that's what you have to offer, and if that's what's on the table, that's what you take. So sure. I commend that. Now, here's the other side of the story. We'll get into a lot of other things. There's a big reason why you're here. Probably one of the biggest reasons that we've had on the show. We'll talk about this a little bit later, but as you're going through this, you went from an IT position to part owner. Mm-hmm. You took an advantage, you saw it, and you made it happen. But that's not all. So in the last 4 years, you've been extremely busy. So talk to me first, because we're going to talk about NYRDA. We're going to talk about PARD. We're going to talk about, some of the external businesses that you're now in. We're going to talk about being all over the place as far as, DC and all the shows, which you were telling me one of your first shows was in San Antonio a few years ago. Correct. So we're not going back that far. And you have accomplished quite a bit in the last 4 seasons, man. The last 4 years, you have made a name for yourself. If you didn't know Jeff Smith before, you know him now. So what's the driving factor? After that happened and you start going to this, what made Jeff we're going to open another store. We're going to open another store. I'm going to be a part of another business. I have Matt, who's a killer. If you guys don't know Matt Radecki, listen, first off, I got to look at Matt like this. And the second thing is he is a worker. I mean, he will get stuff done. So you start with Matt. You have these 2 partners now. And I know that it's gone down to just Matt. You get these opening stores. You bought the last store from Magic, right? Or was it Blue Ocean?
Blue Ocean, Bill Short.
We'll say Blue Ocean. Okay, so you got it from Bill Short. So you're expanding that way. You've opened 2 more stores. I know that there was a little bit that we'll talk about. Getting into the second store is kind of eye-opening. But what pushed you to be able to do what you're doing? So you've got, let's just say the 4 years before that, Jeff was living the IT life. 4 years after that, Jeff is he's trying to change it from Jeff Smith to Jeff Bezos. What's going on?
I mean, a huge thing happened. A lot of folks know about. I'm not shy of talking about it and proud. It's part of who I am, so I'm not going to run from it or hide from it. April 16th of 2022, I decided to get sober. Jeff Smith, the IT guy, was happy just living. Let me take that back. Jeff Smith was not happy. That's why Jeff Smith was drinking heavily for 30 years. Here I go talking about myself in the third person. But just miserable, quite honestly. Drinking just to get through the days. Functioning. Alcoholic is a word that people throw around pretty regular, and it's a thing. That was me. I was, a heavy drinker for 30 years. I started drinking when I was 16. A lot of it had to do with just low self-esteem, I think. I never was very confident. My parents I was, latchkey kids. People that are around my age kind of know what that's like. Mom and dad are out making a living and just being providers. And I resented that. One of my best friends growing up, I played heavily involved in sports, basketball, soccer, merit roll, honor roll, great kid by all accounts. But as soon as I got my driver's license at 16, I found some Mad Dog 2020 and a backfield up in the park and with some friends and a bonfire. And that was the beginning of my drinking time. So then, I found it was a place I could be not myself or just kind of at ease or just, I wasn't me. All the inhibitions, which alcohol does because of the effects that it has. And that's why most people consume and overuse, it was an escape. And the signs were there early on. I went from, one of the things was, the first time I had intercourse. It's supposed to be one of the most memorable things of your life, right? The only way I knew I had sex the first time was I went to a party one night, 16 years old, and woke up the next morning and there was an empty condom wrapper on the side of the bed. And I was like, I think I just had sex for the first time in my life. And this is supposed to be memorable, So that should have been, kind of a alarm sounding or something, but it didn't. And I just continued because I was like, I was able to have sex because I was drinking. So then it's like, this gateway and this is like a tool to give me all the things that I want. And shortly after that, I started skipping school, quit playing sports, barely graduated high school after being merit and honor roll. I think I counted, I skipped 52 days of my senior year, first period. But in my defense, I had physics first period, second, third, and fourth study hall, and then lunch. So it's like to go to school for physics and then sit through 3 study halls and then a lunch.
I am not going to condone that, Jeff.
Okay, well, so see, this is here I go. I'm justifying it. A good good student would have gone to class, studied those 3 study halls, which is what they're for.
Let me ask you something. Are you getting everything out of your rent-to-own business? If you're not an A-Pro member, then the answer is probably no. Look, advocacy is A-Pro's bread and butter. This is why they were created and what they do best. But here's the thing. A-Pro membership is about way more than advocacy. A-Pro connects you to the movers and the shakers of the industry, people who've been there, done that, and they can help you do it even better. A-Pro's monthly webinars give you expert insights and actionable takeaways. It's like having a masterclass for your business every single month. Got questions about complex regulations or sticky situations? No problem. A-Pro's legal hotline gives you direct access to experts who have got the answers. That's a peace of mind that you can't put a price on. And let's not forget the resources, news, updates, and tools that keep you ahead of the curve. Scholarships for your team? Check. Disaster relief when you need it most? Double check. A-Pro is your ultimate support system in the rent-to-own world. So stop settling for less. With A-Pro, members get more. More support, more connections, and more success. Head over to rtohq.org and join the A-Pro family today. Because in this business, more isn't just better. It's essential. See you at the top with A-Pro. Let me ask you a question. And you know, we'll go into this as deep as far as you want to. What was it about the Jeff that was drinking that was different from the Jeff that was sober that made you feel like that person was somebody that you continually wanted to be? Was it being more outgoing? Was it being less afraid? What was it that, you know, said like, you know, hey, who I am doesn't feel as maybe right or as socially acceptable as the guy who can?
100%. It was just that what you said. I was, once I get a couple beers in me and I was okay, like just kind of let the guard down a little and actually maybe approach people instead of waiting to be approached to have a conversation. But to be fair, I kind of got the reputation as being a party guy, so I became popular. Like I had, and you know, I still beat myself up for this day. Like my friend that I grew up with, that I played basketball with, I was starting to allude to this before. His dad was at every practice, every game. My parents weren't there because they were providing. So there was that resentment, and I can talk about that later. When I went to therapy, I was kind of able to resolve that. Because once I got sober, I was like, well, there's a reason I drank for 30 years. And that's kind of getting to what you said now. There was a lot of resentment. One of the things that my therapist told me that really helped me get by was, you know, he asked me about my dad, because I said, hey, you know, my dad never, you know, like they were there, but they weren't like I didn't have the loving, cuddling, I love you. Like I don't think I, until recently, ever heard I love you from my mom, you know, like older ages. We were young. We definitely not got that. But so I resented them for that because I didn't necessarily feel loved. But my therapist told me and helped me overcome by saying, you know, was your dad's dad a good dad? And I said, no, he was kind of an SOB. He was an old school, you know, Depression era. If my dad didn't mow the lawn, he got a butt whooping for it, just like I got, you know, many a belt spankings. And I was telling Tracy last night, there wasn't one of those that I didn't deserve. I earned every single one of those. So, you know, I resented that. And he said, you know, was your dad's dad a good dad? And I said, no. And he said, so I look at it this way. When you're born with an empty tool belt. As you go through life, you acquire tools, hammers, saws, wrenches, you know, you name it, screwdrivers, rulers, whatever. Sometimes you get to the job, you got all the tools you need. Other times you don't even have nearly what you need. He said, your dad just didn't have the tools he needed to be a good dad to you. And when he kind of put it in that perspective, it was, I can't even describe to this day the amount of weight that was lifted off my shoulders, because I was able to forgive my dad and my mom, you know, for that matter. I was always very close with my mom and my dad. We never had any, like, you know, major family blowouts or anything like that. There was just it was just a very cold and just not showing emotion. And my wife will attest to this too. I'm a very not touchy, you know, like it's just because that's the way I was raised, you know. I just, the show emotion was to be soft, I guess, so to speak. But you know, that's, well, I know I'm kind of going off on a tangent here, but that's kind of like mental health is so important, and the stigma that men are weak or soft because they have feelings is just absolutely ludicrous to me, because we all carry something, you know, and that's one thing that sobriety has helped me kind of, you know, the getting into the rooms of AA, and I can kind of speak to that, how I got there.
Well, what I'm curious of is, because, you know, you're describing two Jeffs, right? I've never met the other guy. Mm-hmm. I've met you. Mm-hmm. I appreciate you for who you are. I appreciate what the mind that you bring, the entrepreneurial spirit, the RTO guy, but I've never met the other guy, right? Now, it sounds like in your life, you've had to go through some trials and tribulations to get to where you are now, right? You had therapy, you've gotten married, you've gone through a few things. So the question I have is, at what point did one Jeff look at the other Jeff and go, that's not who I want to be anymore. I mean, there's got to be a point where it was like, you know what, this is, the Hulk to the David Banner, like you are not going to beat me. When did that point come out? And when did you look at yourself and go, that's not who I want to be?
So I kind of touched on being a functioning alcoholic for about 30 years. I always knew I had a problem, going back to, like I said, the first time I had sexual intercourse. There was other times in my life where I kind of went out of my way to get alcohol when I shouldn't have. A friend of mine walked through a snowstorm because we couldn't drink it. And this is like 19 years old. We walked 3 miles in the snow because our buddy threw us out because he didn't want us partying because he had college the next day. This is my mindset at 19. I walk a mile in the snow to a Rite Aid store, use my fake ID, go to my grandparents' house, which was vacant and abandoned at the time. No heat, no nothing. It's middle of January in Western New York, and I'm drinking a case of beer with my buddy, huddled under blankets. And it's like, obviously at 50, I can look back at that 31 years ago and be like, what were you thinking?
Yeah.
But when you're in it, that's the problem with alcohol too, is it's such a selfish disease. That's all you focus on. You're just, where's my next drink? Where's my next drink? Where's my next drink? And to Naomi's credit, she stuck with me we just had our 24-year wedding anniversary in May, and we've been together almost.
Congratulations. 24 years. That's amazing.
Yeah, 24 years married, and probably close to 30. We met at the Holiday Inn back when we both worked. And there was other signs throughout the year, but, to talk more about the selfishness of alcoholism, we'd be on vacation, and there could be the world-class diner, and I love food, obviously, by my stature now. We could be on vacation, and it could be the five-star diner, highly recommended, Pigeon Forge, Tennessee. But I'd look, if they didn't have beer, we weren't going. Because guess what? I'm on vacation. I'm going to have a beer with my lunch. And then where we're going to go after that, it's going to be alcohol somewhere nearby in the near future. It may not be, we might go to a museum for 20 minutes or half hour, but somewhere outside of that, there's going to be an escape for me to go find that drink. And that's going to be all that's on my mind, because that is the mind of an alcoholic. That's literally 24/7. You obsess about it. So to get to your question, and I apologize that I go off in tangents here. 2021, I bought it in the hometown. So that 30-year hard drinking, structure of 9 to 5 left when I became an owner. We only had one store. We were just opening a second. Had Matt and our ex-partner Chris and myself, one store. Each store had a store manager. Matt and Chris are like, hey, just got to show up a couple days a week. Not. I was still kind of working behind the scenes doing my IT stuff, because that's what they brought me on for too, was my IT. I've got pretty good with numbers, pretty good with spreadsheets, pretty good with insurance, pretty good, dabbling a little bit of everything, I guess. And so when I didn't have that 9 to 5, and now we go to bed at 9, I'd stay up till midnight drinking, wake up in the morning, feel like crap, a little BV in the coffee, take care of the, hair of the dog. Anybody that's out there that drinks heavily knows how good the hair of the dog can feel. And it's unfortunate, but it does work for a little while. But then, that one BV turned into 2, and then I'm drinking 3 cups of coffee, and then I'm switching to beer at noon because I don't want to get too messed up, because the hard stuff really, does it to you. 2, 3 o'clock, Naomi call me and say, what are you doing? Oh, I'm napping, but I was really just passed out drunk. And that went on for probably a good portion of 2021. March 2022, in that same cycle. And I'd seen the signs, but was too far gone to really didn't care. I had a house over my head, a wife that loved me. I thought I was living a good life. Started drinking and driving. I remember actually, I think it was that day of my birthday. I got a $70,000 truck, and I got an open beer in it. I'm sitting at the bar drinking at 4 o'clock in the afternoon on my birthday. We go home and, decide to go to dinner. And at 5:30, we go to dinner at an Italian restaurant. And it's, she takes out her, I can barely keep my eyes open. I'm drinking, of course, I ordered a pint of 2X IPA, stronger the better, baby. Bring it. And next day, she shows me a video, because I don't really remember the dinner. She shows me a video of myself at 5:15, 5:30 in a hometown rent-to-own T-shirt, barely able to hold a pint of beer up to my face. And I kind of decided then that's my birthday was March 8th. I quit drinking April 16th, so you can kind of do the math. It didn't take me long from there to decide that that's not who I wanted to be.
So it was your wife with the recording that showed one Jeff to the other.
Ultimately, yeah. So then I decided to seek some help. Kicking and screaming, I went. I did some research, and there's some drugs out there that you can take, because it was my identity. I was always Schmitty. It was a badge of honor. I was a big drinker. Senior skip day, I think I funneled 20 beers, drank the last 4, and passed out. And everybody's like, Schmitty, remember that time when you drank? So it was just like part of who I was, and that's the sad. To kind of go off a little bit, that's a sad state of our society, that people celebrate the fact that I could funnel 20 beers and drink 4, and then pass out, and that was like celebrated, right? Like that just tells you the status and the stigma, or the, you know, how much of a pedestal we as a society put alcohol on. And anybody that wants to do it, but, you know, by all means, go for it, as long as you can do it responsibly. But, you know, and that's I kind of make the point about, you know, on the commercials, they show you, you know, beaches and bikinis and good times and great times, but what they don't show you is Christmas Eve, when the guy, you know, the fathers drank, you know, a handle of vodka, and the kids don't have any Christmas the next day because dad passed out. You know, they don't show you that stuff on the TV,
Right.
ton of TV shows. But anyway, and I'm not getting up on a pedestal and trying to.
No, it's reality.
Trying to-
I mean, it's part of the reality that comes with it, you know, and sometimes I think that's what we don't see, you know, and I know that there are people out there, and we're not going to call any names or any situations, but I know that there are people out there who are facing the same problem, because it is a disease, and it's hard to to shake off. Not everybody has a Naomi at home going, hey, this is what you look like, you know, when you're out with me and we're trying to celebrate, and you know, and it's just as equally hard, because somebody might be getting that video, but it's also equally hard to look at it and go, I need to make a change. So, you know, at the end of that, you make the change.
Mm-hmm. Kicking and screaming, as I said, there's some medications out there that, you know, allow you to kind of still drink a little bit, because I wanted to drink socially, because that's who I was. And I went to my nurse practitioner and told her, I said, hey, Tammy, you know, I've been struggling with alcohol a little bit. And she says, yeah, I know you have. I've seen your liver enzymes. I've known for a long time. And I thought I was fooling her, because I always told her, oh, I drink, you know, she's like, how much do you drink? Every doctor, right? You go in for a physical. How much do you drink? You know, 6 to 8 on the weekends, but I drink IPAs. So it might, you know, she's like, I've known. She goes, I'm not an idiot, you know?
Yeah.
So she's like, and I'm not going to prescribe you that. And she took out a piece of paper and wrote some stuff down and slid it across the table to me. And it was an AA meeting, date and time. And that really kind of turns out she was a 12-year recovering alcoholic. And, you know, you want to talk about divine intervention, that put me into the rooms of AA on April 16th. And I haven't had a drink since.
So if you were to say that religion, faith, God helped you on this path, is that a safe assumption?
Man, yeah, that's a 100% accurate statement.
I love that.
Yeah, and I don't want to get religion, politics, and all that stuff you're not supposed to talk about. So I don't want to go too deep into it to disinterest anyone. But there's no doubt that my life was saved by Jesus. I mean, there's absolutely no way I'd be sitting in Tampa, Florida, coming out. You know, I went to back-to-back Tampa Rays game last night with the R&R crew in a suite. Today, I'm, you know, sitting behind home plate with one of my best friends from school. You know, driving an hour to Lutz, Florida to do this. Like, you know, I didn't do that. God did that. You know, there's no way I could have done that by myself. And I was kind of talking to Adam last night, actually, about the footprints in the sand. That kind of like my life, you know, like when the guy's like, well, you know, where were you when there was just the one set? And it's like, God's like, well, I was carrying you, you know?
Right.
And that to me is like, you know, a perfect picture of my life.
A true story.
Yeah. Like it's just,
You know, as we're going through it, one of the reasons why I wanted to start out with the stories of what people do know about Jeff, right? It's not easy to start a business. It's not easy to get to 5. It's not easy to open another business. It's not easy to buy a store. It's not easy to have the weight of the world on your shoulders. And in fact, one would think sometimes in our society, as things go on, the more pressure you got, the more you would have been inclined. But 4 years, 2 months, here you are on the opposite side of the spectrum. So what I wanted to talk about was that transition of, this is where I was 30 years in. My wife, you know, kind of makes this plea like, hey, this is who you are when you can't see it. Your life starts changing. How much, you know, now you're at a point where even the doc is like, hey, I'm going to give you a hand here and show you something. Was it shocking to find people that actually knew that you didn't know knew, or was it shocking that people were like, you know what, I want to help you out. I want to give you a helping hand. I want to help you get through this, because maybe the other Jeff wouldn't have recognized that. And now you see that, you know, there's people who really care. And was that a shock?
No. And it's a great testimonial to who I surrounded myself with when I was drinking. Cause all my friends drank. Most of my friends are close friends, but every one of them supported me 100%. I did have to do a kind of almost like a 6 months sabbatical, so to speak. Because one of the things AA teaches you is sober faces, sober places. It's really hard to get sober when you're around alcohol. You know, I missed out on a lot. Like I remember 3 weeks in, my wife and I had Eagles tickets that we had bought several months before I quit drinking, and I knew, like, if I go to KeyBank Center in Buffalo to an Eagles concert, 3 weeks sober, guess what's going to happen?
Yeah.
You know, I trust myself, but I don't trust myself that much. You know, So there was a lot of sacrifice, and a lot of sacrifices by Naomi too, because she allowed me to stay home when, you know, maybe it was a graduation party or a wedding, and just like, but people understood too, like, you know, Naomi would say, just Jeff staying home because he's trying not to drink. And I'd be, hey, great, go great. But, going back to the religious thing, about 6 months in, God removed the urge to drink from me. I don't know what happened, but every day for the first 6 months, I just, when it's part of your life, like smoking, I used to smoke a pack a day at least when I was drinking, but I had to quit. I actually quit smoking before I quit drinking, which is kind of counterintuitive. Most people, people that smoke and drink will understand, but the life insurance is double if you're a smoker. When I bought in the hometown, I had to get life insurance, and I didn't want to put that financial strain on the company, so I decided to quit smoking before I quit drinking. But yeah, it's without the support of others, but you gotta want to do it for yourself too. I had tried to quit drinking a few times in the past for Naomi and for my family or whatever the case may be, but until I really decided to do it for myself, it wasn't happening.
I can only imagine this walk. And as you get started on this story, you start turning your life around. There was a part of you that said, not only do I want to detail this journey, but I want to open a door for anybody else who's going through the same thing that I am right now. Let me invite you to Jeff's world and to get better, to understand. If you need somebody to talk to, I'm here. And here are some resources. Talk to me a little bit about what you did as far as online and what you created, and what was your plan with that?
So I created a website. It's called RTOrecovery.com. And kind of what led me to that was AA. I actually haven't been to an AA meeting in about 2 years, maybe even 2.5 years. It was great to help me get sober at the beginning, but I also used a lot of TikTok. Therapy obviously helped. Keeping busy with businesses certainly helped. Idle times is the devil's playground, as they say. So I think that's probably what drives me just more than anything, is that desire to be busy and be kept busy. But at the same time, I think that's why, as I learned more about, the brain and how it works, my mind was always working, and it still does. And the alcohol helped stop that, constant, just that hamster on the wheel, like,
Right.
So like alcohol calmed that, but now I use that energy to help others, or, grow businesses, and help others. But we'll kind of get into that. But yeah, that's the RTO recovery was an idea because of AA. It's kind of like the R&R, serve not service.
Serve, not service.
Serve not service. AA is kind of the same thing. It's all about doing service, and that's what I did the first 6 months I was getting sober. I was meeting every Monday, Saturday, making coffee, getting there early, going to speaker meetings, just all in. And because you gotta find something else to do, and that's where AA is huge. But there's so many other ways out there, and that's what I think. There's a stigma, I think, with AA. There's a stigma with alcoholics, honestly, and that's what I put on the website. Is just some options for people to get to an AA meeting. There's a meeting guide on there, but there's also some things that educate and inform people what alcohol does. There's so much that it does, all the way down to your hair. Like, alcohol impacts your hair. It's poison. It literally is poison, and we consume it in bulk sometimes. Fertility, gray matter, cognitive thinking, sleep. Like I mentioned, fertility. It just has so many things. But to get to your question, the concept of it came from AA. I had been about 2.5, 3 years sober, but if I can give one person what I got from getting sober, then that's more rewarding than any business I could ever open. And I have had a dealer reach out to me, and one of our vendors has reached out to me and called me and said, hey, because I shared it in Trib Group Connections when I first started RTOrecovery.com. I did post it in a Facebook group on Trib Group Connections. I don't know how many eyes got on it, but I did want to at least get it out there. And every time I kind of have the opportunity to speak about it, I do. And the best part about it, or the coolest part about it, is there's a chat box option on there, and it's hooked right to. So if somebody clicks on there and it's completely anonymous. If somebody clicks on it, says I need help, it comes. I have a Slack. I have it hooked to Slack through chat bot or something. I don't know. It's the technology eludes me right now, but I was able to create the website, integrate the chat bot, and then link it to my phone. So if it's 12:30 at night and, Schenectady, New York, and somebody needs some help, it'll ping my phone and I can get on and say, hey, how can I help you?
One of the things, a few of the things I noticed, Jeff today has 5 hometown stores. You're president of the NYRDA. Mm-hmm. You are actively helping the RTO industry along with the NYRDA and APRO to work a bill or 2 bills that are currently in New York trying to stop the activity. You have 4 stores. It's 4 stores in New York, right?
3.
3 stores. Okay. 3 stores in New York and then 2 in PA.
Mm-hmm.
So to help that, you've got businesses with other people in the RTO industry, but in other areas. You have expanded to 3 or 4 different businesses, which we'll get into a little bit later. That's in a span of 4 years, 2 months. right? Have you ever thought in the back, where could I be if I didn't wait this long to get to this Jeff?
I have, but one of the things that AA also teaches you is to remember your, like, don't forget your past, but don't dwell on it. And I don't think I'd be as successful as I am at what I'm doing now had I not gone through what I went through. So had I started this journey, this entrepreneurship, that I don't even know how it kind of came, other than, the man above obviously has played a big part in it. Cause I guess my grandfather always had an entrepreneurial spirit. He owned his own plumbing and heating business. And then I've heard stories about he had a tropical aquarium in the living room. Then like my grandma wanted to start a pottery business. So my grandfather, the one that was kind of the mean SOB to my dad, was kind of an entrepreneur too. So I guess my mom tells us, she's like, you got your grandpa's, kind of entrepreneur spirit, but you can't have one without the other. I don't think. I don't think I would have had the strength to be a business owner because it is hard. Everybody, must be nice. I'll tell you, in the last month, we've been told that we're going to be sued because we're racist, and another employee put in her 2-week notice because we are a sexual harassment environment, and she didn't feel comfortable coming to work. So that doesn't. It must not be nice. When somebody says it must be nice, I'd love to just be like, well, let me tell you about my day.
Let me tell you what's going on.
This is by like 9 a.m.
Well, Anthony and I quite often talk about what it is to own a business and how difficult it can be. I don't think I'm quite where you are yet. But one of the reasons I wanted to bring that up is because there are people out there, and I know that you guys are listening, and I really am so I'm proud of you to be here, to be able to have the story and share the story that you have, because there are people out there who are going through it right now, and they're not sure what's on the other side of that rainbow. They're not sure what's on the other side of that bridge. This is where I'm at now, and what difference is it going to make? Why am I going to be that other person? And then, like you said, the wheel starts working, and you know what? My memory is going to start kicking back in, and I'm going to start feeling worse. And it's, what? You could be 4 years later, 4 businesses later, president of the NYRDA later. I know that you were on a special committee to help the introduction to RTO for APRO as well. Did you guys create something?
Education committee. I think that's part of the board. Being on the board, we have committees that we need to be on, but I also do whatever I can to help APRO because it's just to further the industry and better the industry and protect the industry.
Absolutely.
I mean, we're constantly not always openly under attack, but there's always people that are anti RTO or anti just what we do, which is crazy to me.
Yeah. And so, talking to those people and saying there is a light at the end of the tunnel. There is another life out there, whether you're starting it 2 years after you were in it or 30 years after you've had the bottle. You can make something of yourself. And I love sitting across from somebody who's not only doing it, but doing it well and handing a handout to somebody else and saying, hey, I can bring you along. I do have a question as far as the RTO recovery. What made you decide to name it RTO recovery?
For whatever reason, I'm huge on alliteration. And I don't know why. It's just always been something I've liked. Even like my one of my businesses is Serenity Syndicate, just because the Serenity Prayer from AA, and that's a business that I started up with another friend of mine from AA. It's a business we're purchasing from a guy that was also in AA that's got 40 years sober. He's got a small used car lot, and he's selling it. And the guy that's going to be working it for me had 18 years in the car business, but lost his job and needed someplace to go. So I kind of put my thinking cap on and said, hey, Roger, I'll buy the business from you. And then, hey, Mark, you want to run this business for me? I'll do the behind the scenes legal. It's kind of like what I do with Hometown, the legal, the financial, the insurance, all the stuff that nobody likes to do, because it's not fun. It's forms. It's compliance. It's crap. But for some reason I find, but now that I've done it so much, it's second hat. But yeah, the RTO recovery is a alliteration, play on words, and obviously the recovery of merchandise. A lot of people think, or just so it's kind of a play on words, and just my way of maybe somebody accidentally happens on it when they're looking to find out how to recover product, and they oh my gosh,
Yeah, no, for sure.
So just a alliteration and a play on words. No really like super deep meaning to it, other than trying to make it sound cool.
Well, I'm a big Jeff fan, but I do want to ask you a question because I am curious. With everything that you're going on, you have the last 30 years, you have your recovery point, and then you've sprouted. Mm-hmm. But you sprouted big time. Okay, there's been a big sprout point. Have you ever felt like there's a part of Jeff who is, the pendulum is swung, right? It went from where you were to where you are now. Is it swinging too far? Are you stretching too thin? Do you have too many, fires out there? How do you feel about that?
Naomi says yes. I say no. I've got I've got plenty more in the tank, and it's a testament to the energy that you get and feel getting sober, and also a testament to how much of your life that alcohol actually saps, like, the hangovers, like just the I call it, anxiety. A lot of people call it. There was times after I'd go on a 3-4 day bender, like I was afraid to leave the house because they're just so jittery, and and alcohol is a depressant, and
Right.
people, and that's the problem with it is people drink it to remove the anxiety, but it amplifies it, and it amplifies it big time. So I was getting to where I couldn't even go outside. I'd be taking the dog out and a tree branch would crack and I'd be like, scare me out, scare the bejesus out of me. It's like a branch just broke, it's like no big deal. But to me, it was just like that and the guilt, the shame, the remorse, that's just the way alcohol makes you feel. So no, I don't think I'm getting too thin. And a part of that is people. I have great people in place to help me along the way. And I'll probably talk about that more as I continue to make this podcast longer than anybody ever has.
No, it's okay. Part of going through this, part of the story is not all the good times, right? I mean, part of Dorothy on her trip on the Yellow Brick Road was that it wasn't just one-sided. There was a lot that came to it. So as we get to the Wizard of Oz, we've got to figure out what brought you here, what trials and tribulations did you have to go through, what it taught you, and then how you took that. Because there's another way to look at it. And you can say, I've had 30 years of the worst part about my life, and Pete, you never want to do anything about that. And you know what? I'm just glad to come home every night and not be dead. But you've taken that and decided to use that story, that experience, that push, and say, you know what? I know so far what it can do. I don't want to do that. Where can I be because of this? Cognitively, I'm better, healthier. My wife's probably extremely happier that I'm getting into businesses versus anything else. So you've taken that drive and literally moved it somewhere else. And I think that even if there's one person out there, and it might not be today, it might not be tomorrow, if there's somebody that hears this podcast and says, you know what, not that I'm trying to take away from it, but if Jeff can do it, if I can go to a website, if I can talk to somebody, if I can talk to my doctor, if I can talk to my wife, a friend, if I can ping Jeff at 2:00 in the morning and he's not knocked out from all the jobs that he's working and he hits me back, if that changes something, it's worth it.
Oh, 100%.
And I would love to hear from anybody out there who is going through something. There are no, in this conversation, in this podcast, we're not causing blame or anything. We are all human here. I have made so many mistakes in my life. I mean, I'm glad this podcast isn't about me because I really have nothing to blame except myself. But, at times, I think we all forget that we're human, that we are human. We make mistakes. And that is one of the things that makes us beautiful, that we have the ability to learn from that and grow from that. I think part of being human is you get to share that experience with somebody else who's going through that, right? And it's one of those things like you're going through it, I'm going through it. Let's sit down and talk. How do we make it better? How do I make you better? How do you make me better? Just from one day to the next, one foot in front of the other. And to be able to go from a situation where we're trucking through the snow, we're not remembering certain events in our lives that probably made a difference, to, yesterday, as we're out in R&R, as we're out looking on the field from a suite that was an amazing time to be had between all of us, you had somebody there. Now, I'm not just talking about Matt, because you guys are like tag teaming it, but Dave and Chris were there. And it looked like Dave and Chris now had the opportunity that a 4-year younger Jeff had, where let me help you along. How do you become a part of your own story? This is how I can help you get there. Talk to me a little bit about that. Like, you had the opportunity, somebody saw in you, regardless of the fact, because at that point in time, you said you were still in it. You were still doing your thing. And they saw Jeff and said, no, it's worth, that guy is still worth doing this. And I love Matt to death. I mean, I love his aura. I love his person. I love who he is. I know that he's not stupid, but he saw that it was still worth it. You see Dave, you see Chris, they're wanting to come up. They've been in the business. And Jeff now goes, I know what it's like to put a hand out. Let me help you out. Talk to me a little bit about that story and how you got them together to now hopefully open an R&R very, very soon.
Hopefully within 6 to 12 months, if all goes as planned.
We are pushing for that, guys. But I mean, tell me about that story.
So yeah, this is a great LegCon story, I think, and just a tribute to the importance of networking and going to these events because you never know what's going to come of it. Matt, Chris, Dave, and I went. Matt, Chris, and Dave were first times. Dave and Chris were fellows, which is great. Went to LegCon, and Matt and I had been talking R&R for quite a while, and it's a healthy investment. It's not a cheap in, and rightfully so, because it's a quality brand, quality, franchise, quality people. So it shouldn't be easy, because if it was easy, everybody would do it. And I say that about owning a business a lot. If it was easy, everybody would do it. But yeah, so we're at LegCon, and Vince is there, and Vince had a former coworker, our district manager that I spoke of, that kind of led me out of the industry one of the 2 times I left. And they just kind of got to hear a little bit more about R&R at LegCon. And Matt ended up driving home alone. Matt and then Dave, Chris, and my wife ended up driving back ourselves because we wanted to take in some of the sights of DC. And Dave's kind of like, well, tell me about R&R, and what about it? And I was like, well, Matt and I are, we've been thinking about doing one for a while, but it's a pretty hefty investment. And I started thinking, well, 1 divided by 4 is a lot better than 1 divided by 1 or 1 divided by 2. So. Right. So I kind of had an epiphany on the back roads of Pennsylvania on the way from LegCon back home. And, I said, hey, do you guys think you could come up with, XYZ for your 1/4 of a down payment? They're like, for what? I was like, I want to bring you guys in. Like, let's do it, and selfishly, I kind of did that, underhandedly to lock them in at hometown for life. Adam calls them golden handcuffs. But Dave, I've known for probably 20 years. Chris, I've known for 28 years. Matt, I've known, for quite a while too. The 4 of us, in fact, I named our corporation name is HOTVOG, which is House of Television. And you know what OG stands for.
They're the OGs, guys. They're the original OGs. That's what it is.
So it's the House of TV Original Gangsters. So it's HOTVOG Corp is our company name. Awesome. So I kind of, my play on words, I guess. It's just a little fun. I like to have a little fun with it. So it's a good chance to get them, some sweat equity. Some people call it whatever you want to call it. Those guys, bust their ass for us day in, day out. We try to do what we can for them, but we're still growing. We still have those growing pains. We still got some of those loans, out from when we were growing, which was some very trying times. Speaking when we opened Jamestown, there was some scary days there. The checkbook was negative. So you learn from that too. But yeah, I grew up poor pretty much. I started working when I was 14, living paycheck to paycheck. Even when I was, bought into hometown, I was, getting by, doing well, living good, lower middle class, I would say, whatever. But I want for nothing now. God has provided everything for me. I don't want to say I don't care about money, but that's not my motivating factor. And I can help these guys and kind of vicariously through them help their kids, which I wasn't able to have. Naomi and I had a miscarriage about 20 years ago, or 19. Our kid would be about 18 now, and we just never had kids. But that was I was always spiritual, but I kind of left God, and that's where I talk about the footprints in the sand. I didn't want to get the science involved, because if it just wasn't meant to be, and I probably wasn't fit to be a dad, honestly. 30 years as an alcoholic, you're not probably going to be a great dad either. Like a different version of my dad and my grandpa for different reasons. So vicariously, I can, Dave's like, man, because we're talking about open 4, 5, 6 of these things. Dave's like, man, I could put my kids through school. And Chris is like, Chris's daughter works for us. She's our marketing manager. Chris's son-in-law works for us. He's our Jamestown store manager. So Chris can set up his kids and his daughter and his son-in-law. Dave can put his kids through college. So in a roundabout way, I know it's kind of a long reach and far-fetched, but me getting sober was changing lives, talk about, you talk about that. That's deep.
It's a story.
Me getting sober, potentially may, because I would have never been in that car coming back from LegCon had I not got sober, right? You just have to, God puts you in these places, and, we call them Godisms and AA. So yeah, just getting these guys to have taste, it to me means more to me than any amount of profits I can take from R&R or any of the other, even the car dealership that I'm talking about. I want Mark to know what it's like to have his own business, and in 10 years, he's 57, I think. 8 years, we can sell the place for probably 3 times what we bought it for. So to be able to do that, is just very special to me.
Hey everyone, it's Pete Chow here from the RTO Show podcast, and I want to tell you about a company that's making a real difference in the rent-to-own space. Wow Brands. I've seen firsthand how they approach marketing, and let me tell you, it's not just about ads. Wow Brands builds complete digital ecosystems designed specifically for the rent-to-own industry. Their e-commerce and lead generation strategies are built to bring in qualified leads. And did I mention that they are actively working with the rent-to-own industry while also being members of APRO and TRIB? Listen, these folks are passionate problem solvers. They don't just slap something together. They design, build, and scale the kind of digital retail tools your business needs and your customers actually want. So if you're serious about growing, reach out to Wow Brands at wowbrands.com. I trust them, and I think you will too. I am a firm believer that if you use your blessings to bless others, it multiplies. Mm-hmm. You know, there was a story about 2 loaves of bread and some fish. If you take your blessings and you bless others, it will multiply. And so as we move on, and something that you said is really important to me, because and I think everybody knows that we are very A-pro positive on this show, because I believe that there's a lot that's going on. But there is a part of it that I don't want to say it's selfish, but you have to network. Honestly, Jeff and I met at DC and LegCon a couple years ago. It was because of that networking, that talking. When you have a lot of people that come into that space, the professionals that you have, the amount of people, the knowledge, the experience, the entrepreneurial spirit, even just guys who know how to have a great relationship with their customers in their store, to get everybody together is amazing. So it's great to hear that not only did the fellow program help them come, but it also might have inadvertently helped them become R&R owners as well. So we're going to be following that story. But, those are the things that I tell people all the time. If you have somebody who's on the edge, they don't know if they want to be in rent to own. They're not sure about a career. They have a job. They're not sure about a career. Take them to an event. Take them to DC. Take them to RTO World. Take them to Meeting of the Minds. And I guarantee you, with the amount of belief that goes in those walls, and you said yourself, culture, you cannot fake culture. You cannot beat it with a stick. It is there. You will have somebody that go from, I have a job, to I have a career. And you might go from, I have a career, to I might be a business owner. I'm going to have to hang out with Jeff a little bit longer. But, I love hearing those things. I love hearing that your blessings have multiplied and that you've been able to help other people along that way. So, talking about these things and how it affected you, how you have allowed it to change you for the better and help others. What's something that you would say right now to somebody who's, let's say they were in your shoes, they're a functional alcoholic, they're having a hard time, but they can get by. They've learned to just stay in the status of get by. What more do you think that they can do? And what do you think that they can possibly work on, look at, read, or that might trigger them to get out of that rut?
I would say just talk to somebody. Anybody. It doesn't have to be a professional. One of the things that's opened my eyes, one of the things AA and sobriety opened my eyes to, is that we're all going through something. We're all dealing with something. You don't know what people are going through when you're talking to them. So don't, just be a good person. But just talk to somebody. There is help out there in a lot of places. And it doesn't have to be AA. That's what kind of mentioned, like the AFL. It's an alcohol-free lifestyle. There's podcasts. There's tons of different ways. And in fact, I have a story. I belong to the Rotary Club in Jamestown, and I brought up the director of the hospital. There's a new director of the hospital in Jamestown, and she was just talking about like the mental health in Jamestown, and there's a bad epidemic of heroin and fentanyl, just like there is all across the country, but it's especially bad in our area. And several months ago at one of the Rotary Club meetings, a gentleman was from Jamestown Development Company was talking about homelessness, mental health, drug use, and I said to the lady, I said, you're talking about it, he's talking about it, but have you two talked? You guys are the people that can do something about us. And then I told her, I said, hey, I just hit 4 years sober in April. Because there's a new committee. I would love to help any way I can with this committee. After the meeting, 2 people come up to me, and one girl said, I'm 6 days away from being a year sober. The other lady, the director of the Rotary, said, I'm 2.5 years sober. And I talked to him about it, and I said, and they didn't use AA. One girl uses the podcast, and another girl, there's like, just like YouTube, or just, whatever. There's resources out there, especially today. There's tons of podcasts out there. So just talk about it, and don't be afraid to try. If you fail, get back up. There's a lot of controversy in AA about, counting days and stuff like that. If you have 93 days and then you drink, you have to start over. It's like, those 93 days didn't just, then that's one of the things that is kind of a downside of AA, I guess. I don't necessarily agree with those things, because you didn't lose those 93 days. You still gained 93 days of sobriety or 120 days of sobriety. Like, they're not gone. So why should you start over? Yeah, you fell, but how many times have you fallen in life and gotten back up? So just talk to somebody would be my advice. Talk to me, get on the RTO recovery website, or go to an AA meeting. It's an anonymous for a reason, and it's a very interesting room, and it's a very welcoming room. You don't feel judged. You can feel free to talk, and or even if you have questions, you can do them online. There's Zoom meetings. So even if you don't want to physically step into a room of a church or basement of a church, find a Zoom meeting online.
I going into my youth, I grew up in New York till I was 9, and then I came to Florida, and I saw a crazy event. Some lady, and she was over the edge as far as drugs were concerned. She lost her life, and it scared me to death. Now, at that point in time, I didn't know anything about drugs. I just knew that at that age, something could happen to you. There it is. And so it terrified me. But I've always had, and I don't know if this is the right word, I would say an addictive personality. There are certain things that I get stuck on, and I am very repetitive, and I stay away from anything that's like that, because I have a feeling that if I ever did, I wouldn't be able to come up for air. And so I always feel like there's a limit that I've got to stay away from, and I can respect that. I've actually never really said that too much to anybody, but it's one of those things, I know for a fact that I dive into a lot of things. Maybe I shouldn't, right? But nothing crazy, but I know that there are times when I've dived in, I'm like, I don't have to, but I did. And I have a feeling that if I found something that took the edge off, I would be weeks and months into it before I was like, wait a minute, I made a mistake. But in your experience and what you've gone through, is that the hardest part? Is that the first part, just talking to somebody else? Because I think internally, sometimes we can say, I have this. This is for me. I know I shouldn't be doing this, but I'm gonna do it. I can't talk myself out of it. I keep saying I will, but I don't. So you have these internal conversations. Is it making it external and including somebody else into your narrative, into your thoughts, going, I have a problem? Is that one of the big things that makes a difference?
I would say it's interesting that you say that, because step 1 is of the 12 steps of AA, which I only got to step 4, which is kind of strange, but because there are 12 steps and I only did 4 of them, but I the other 8 I did my own way, or whatever the case may be. But step 1 is admitting you are powerless over alcohol and that you have a problem. So I would say once you can get to that point, then you've at least opened the door for an opportunity at success of getting sober. Because if you don't see it as a you problem, and that's the problem with addiction too, right? Is we blame everything. Oh, I'm going to take the edge off. Oh, I'm going to, I had a bad day at work. I had a good day at work, and that's the problem with alcohol, right? Like, hey, let's go out. You turned 25. Let's go celebrate your birthday. Oh, your mom died. Let's have let's have some shots and get really drunk and forget about it. So, so there's plenty of excuses to make yourself do it. And so it's I guess being self-aware and realizing you have a problem, I think is definitely step 1. And then just, taking the actions to correct it or do what you need to do to correct it.
So last night we're out, and I'm literally looking at the 12 steps right here. And you almost read that verbatim. So that's awesome. I mean, remembered it verbatim, I should say. But so last night we're out, and, I forgot. I just completely forgot. So everybody's, having a couple drinks. And then I said, oh my God, am I pushing this narrative on somebody who's really trying to get their act together? And here I am, right? Now, mind you, one whole drink is all it takes for me. So I literally had half a beer. But, now that you find yourself in those situations, you handle yourself pretty well. How long did it take to be able to say, because in RTO, we know how to party, right? I've been to some of these events, and then, there's some after hours where we know how to have fun, and whether it's good or bad. There are people out there who I've seen out till 3, 4, 5 in the morning and get up and be at the 7:30 breakfast, which I have no idea. I have no idea how you did that, but I know that they're out there. How long did it take you to say, you know what, I can still be in this RTO business. I can still do business with the guys that I know are going to go out there later on and still be okay? That
took longer than the 6 months to, the urge to drink left after 6 months. That doesn't speak to the peer pressure or the the need to feel to belong, which is what I think drove, many of us probably started drinking because of that too, right? It's all the popular kids are doing it, and I always wanted to be one of the cool kids, and I never was. But once I started drinking, I got my driver's license, and next thing you know, it's like, hey, Schmitty can get things, I was that guy. So that part took a lot longer than the urge to drink. We touched on it briefly last night, San Antonio RTO world. My first meeting sober was Meeting of the Minds, which I wanted to touch on. Kind of helped me get involved in the industry because it was the year that Carl retired.
That's right. That's right.
I didn't even know Carl, but that was my first show of any kind as an owner, and just the outpouring of love and the whole vibe of Trib and just everybody like donating. I didn't even know the guy, and I donated, I think, $50 or whatever. I don't even remember what it was, but I was just like, I felt compelled because of the love and the togetherness and the family feel of Trib to Carl. And that's what really got me involved in, like, I said, I got to go to all these things. Like, this is great, you know, and then I got involved with APRO and stuff like that. So, but to answer your question, San Antonio was my first show. Matt and Chris, my ex-partner, were at Meeting of the Minds in Atlanta with me when Carl retired. I was 9 months sober then. Wasn't bad because I was with those guys. I went to RTO World in San Antonio, which I'm thinking was the same year, because I remember struggling then too. And in fact, I told you last night, it got so bad that I changed my flight and went home like that day, because I was just like, it was overwhelming. You know, not that it wasn't just not any one particular event or you know, a thing that happened. It was just the overall, you know, prevalence of alcohol there, and everybody just, and I didn't know anybody at that time either, really. You know, I knew Matt and Chris at the time, and Matt couldn't go, and my wife was working a regular job before I hired her, brought her on to help Hometown grow. So it was tough. And then LedgeCon, my first LedgeCon, was tough because, you know, we were at I believe it was the Hilton downtown, and you know, you get your packet, and then there's the welcome reception as soon as you grab your packet. And I didn't know what to expect either, and I didn't know anybody then either, especially these guys. These are like, you know, the legends like Shannon, and you know, just right. Like these guys that, you know, I've heard about and read about and seen from afar, but never shook their hand or introduced, you know, talked to, you know. And I'm raw dogging it sober. And the other problem was too, there wasn't a lot of non-alcoholic options. You know, I think I was drinking like tonic water, which is absolutely atrocious. You know, so there was no like, you know, unsweet tea or bubbly or sparkling water. And there was none of that there. APRO's done a great job of kind of changing that narrative, you know, and getting us some non-alcoholic options at the events. But after that, I'd say probably, you know, 18 months and as I kind of got to know more people in the industry and became more comfortable in my own skin around people in the industry, it got way easier. And now I could sit next to, you know, anybody, any of the guys at the bar, you know, toe to toe, and not have a problem, you know, smelling it, seeing it, hearing it. It's not a sweat at all. Well,
it's a challenge. It's a triumph to see that you've been able to do that. So I've got in front of me the 12 steps. Step 1, we admitted that we were powerless over alcohol. Step 2, came to believe that the power greater than ourselves could restore us to sanity, which we kind of hit on a little bit. Made a decision to turn our will and our lives over to the care of God as we understood him. Made a searching and fearless moral inventory of ourselves. And then that's it. So you got to 4 out of 12. Mm-hmm. What made you decide when you got to 4, you're like, I know that not only am I good, I'm good enough to go out on my own and continue this, bring people onto my boat, help them out, open a website, open locations. What was it at step 4 that made you go, I'm okay? Was it God? Was it the belief?
Yeah, I was just going to say step 2, 3, and 4, or whatever, whichever one's mentioned a spiritual, you know, like any of that, all of the above. And I don't, you know, AA is a great program. I love it, and it got me sober, and I still am friends with, you know, I'm obviously going into business with friends from AA, and I encourage anybody to use it. But kind of my point is there's other options out there, I think, is what more I would try to say. And that's not why I haven't been to a meeting. It's because I don't like it or, you know, disagree with it. It's just because God got me, you know, like, and sometimes I will speak to this. Sometimes there's a somberness in those rooms where you kind of feel like you've got to be kind of like feel a certain way. 'Cause like my life is great, man. Like I'm trying to be humble when I say that, but like I couldn't ask for a better life. You know, my worst day sober is better than my best day drunk. You know, a lot of people will say, you'll hear that a lot if you deal with people in recovery, those, you know, and that's true. So it's hard for me to tone it down when I go in there, because I just have so much good things going on in my life. You know, I don't want to feel like I'm toned down, and I don't want to not be myself either. You know, and AA teaches you to, I think one of the steps is to, you know, practice these things in all your affairs, I think is one of the steps, and to help others. And that's I've carried on that tradition. But if you read the 12 steps, I encourage anybody to read them. If you don't drink, you could apply that to your everyday life, right? I mean, take a moral inventory and you know, apologize to those you've wronged. Like, you don't have to be an alcoholic to do that. You know, be a man, stand up, you know, like apologize. You know, you did people wrong, you know, be a man about it. You know, like the relief you'll feel would be, I guarantee you'd feel a lot better. Yeah, it's going to be one of the hardest things you ever did, but you'll be glad you did it.
Well, so what you said earlier is that if anybody needed to reach out, talk about it, that would be a message that you would give to somebody who might be going through this functioning alcoholic stage in their life. What would you say to somebody who is now They're kind of on the edge. They're not sure if RTO is a career. They're not sure if they want to stay just as a job or move forward. As somebody who has now been 4 years on the entrepreneurial boat, completely changed from literally doing IT to owning 5 locations, what would you say to somebody who's on that fence? You know, coming from Jeff and the Jeff-ism that we're going to talk about it, right? We talked last night about Randy-isms. We talked about different things. What is a Jeff-ism that you would say, you know what, you're on that fence, you haven't picked a career, you're not sure. This is my advice to you.
Stick with it. Put yourself out there, because the more you put yourself out there, the more opportunities are going to open up for you. I don't doubt at all that that's true in my case, you know, and surround yourself with people, you know, surround yourself with like-minded people. You know, if you want to, if you want to fly, or if you want to soar with eagles, you got to fly, or something. I don't remember the exact word, but if you want to fly, soar with, or if you want to fly with eagles, you got to soar. I don't know. But, you know, just surround yourself with like-minded people. And that's what alcoholics tend to do too, right? It's the comparison, and I was guilty of it. I always hung out with this guy. I thought, I'm not as bad as that guy. So you always kind of find that one person that's just a little bit worse than you, but your worst keeps getting worse and worse and worse too. Like you start going down that dangerous road to where like all of a sudden alcohol may not be all you're doing, just because you want to keep telling yourself that you're not that bad. So you start hanging around with people that are doing alcohol and drugs maybe. So, but yeah, put yourself out there. Just, you know, hang with, you know, if you're not the smartest person in the room, find a new room for sure. And in the RTO world, there's so many more opportunities than just your store level, and hang in there, you know, because that's kind of why, you know, Dave and Chris, like they've been in the business a long time, but that's going to create, you know, we spoke briefly about the opportunities and the growth that can happen between hometown R&R, and we haven't even really touched on Mr. Appliance yet. You know, there's a lot of lateral movement. There's a lot of upward movement that can now happen. You know, Chris is a district manager. Dave's a corporate trainer. They're going to now be owners in R&R Tire Express. As they attrition out of hometown as those people, there's some of our strong store managers are going to be able to move in those positions. Our strong assistant managers are going to be able to move into those positions. So if you feel stuck, you're not. There's options out there. Get like you said, get to a show, you know, meeting the minds, trip, get on the leap sessions. You know, there's tons of stuff out there. There's IT jobs out there. There's HR jobs out there. There's payroll jobs out there. Just because you're a salesperson at an RTO store doesn't mean you can't have a job in HR.
Right.
So find what you like and kind of follow that passion too, I would say.
On a scale of 1 to 10, how important is it, your circle? How important is your circle around you?
10, no doubt about it. Yeah. And I give thanks to Matt, Chris, and Dave because of how good they are. It allows me to be able to be the president of NYRDA, be on the board of APRO, be on the board of PARD. You know, if these guys weren't as good at what they do as they are, then I would be putting out fires in the business instead of, you know, helping the business. So I make a joke that Chris is our firefighter because that's what he does. He puts out the fires at 8 a.m. before they get to Matt and I. You know that.
Oh, I've lived that life. Yeah, I've gotten calls early in the morning.
So-and-so called in, so-and-so did that, you know, and that's what Chris does for us. And by him, you know, that was Matt and I when we had 2-3 stores, but once we got to 4 and 5, and we kind of had that in mind when we brought Chris on too. That was, you know, I brought Chris in as an assistant manager with the idea that he was going to be a district manager for me. I brought Dave on as a corporate trainer. We kind of created that position for him, knowing that we were going to be opening an R&R and need his, Trish called him a unicorn, you know, 7 years. And I think he's got 7 years in RTO and 5 years as a tire manager. Like,
oh yeah, definitely.
You know, like
definitely unicorn.
Who else would you rather have like start your R&R franchise than a guy like that? So
well, promises made, promises kept so far. So as you sit here now, you have the mic, you have the camera. If you were to sit here now, like you are, who do we need to thank for the Jeff today?
First and foremost, God. You know, Naomi obviously has been a big part of that, but God put Naomi in my life too. So I'd have to say 100% Jesus Christ. Yeah.
Is there anybody else that you would have put on there?
You know, Randy Otander, he taught me things he didn't even know he was teaching me. One of the reasons I was so loyal to him, and one of the things that's helped me become a good, what I think is a good boss. I think I'd been 4 months in the business as an account manager, and I walked into work one day and there was a almost brand new set of Callaway Steelhead X14 irons in the back room that he had dropped off on my day off. And my manager comes up, and I was just an account manager, account manager, we called it at the time. And my store manager comes out, he's like, "Hey, Randy dropped these off for you yesterday." And I had talked to Randy about golf here and there and told him I didn't have like great clubs or anything like that, but we had some conversations or whatever. And I was ecstatic, of course, because I was making $8 an hour. I can't afford $1,000.
Oh, yeah, you're talking about some nice clubs.
$1,000 set of irons, and I went up and thanked Randy, and he's like, thank you. He said, I hear you've been doing a really good job for us. You know, now to him, he was probably very well off, multimillionaire, probably. So $1,000 set of irons to him is nothing, but to me, that
I was going to say. It means
a guy that had, I started working at 14 so I could buy Doritos and Mountain Dew because my parents couldn't afford them, Right. So for me to get a gift like that really impacted my life in a lot of ways.
So as we come into the end, we talked about some other positions that you had. You have now gone into Mr. Appliance. So we've talked about the car dealership. We've talked about your RTO. Mr. Appliance is something else that you've gotten into. Now, I will say, it has worked for some and not worked for others. If you can have it close enough to have your own store serviced by your other one business. Mm-hmm. I know that they aren't close enough right now, but as you open up these businesses and you have them all together, you keep RTO on what you do. How did you manage to open up some Mr. Appliances, and what got you into that?
RTO comes back to RTO and God. Maybe that's what we'll title this podcast.
RTO and God. RTO and God.
Matt and I struggled to find somebody to fix our appliances. Besker and Cost was like an hour away. They were charging us $280, $320, $300 every time they came. It would take like a week, 2 weeks sometimes for them to get there. So we got loaners tied up, and we didn't have a lot of cash flow at the time to get loaners. Loaners were big, like it was tough. Yeah. And I had gone to a seminar actually, so talking back to the importance of TRIB and MOTM and A-Pro and RTO world, and Chad Fosdick had put out an entrepreneur thing and talked about Mr. Appliance at one point.
Yep.
So I thought, well, if I'm going to pay somebody to do that, and the tipping point was a conversion, LP conversion. It converted the stove, and the orifices are, $20-$30 maybe, and they charged me like $300 to do it. So $80 for the part and 2 hours late, whatever it was, and it was like $300. I'm like, you know what, enough's enough. If I'm going to write checks to somebody to fix appliances, I'm going to write them to Hometown Rent to Own, or I'm going to write them to Mr. Appliance, from Hometown Rent to Own. So Matt and I kind of got to work on getting some funding for that. I went through the steps and the hoops, which I've kind of discussed what that looks like. And so we opened up Mr. Appliance in Jamestown, Warren, and I knew there was some opportunity in Erie, Pennsylvania. I put a down payment, 10% down payment to lock that territory up. Opened that in August of 2025. And how RTO ties all of this again is Greg Skinner from Leopard Mobility and I are getting ready to close actually Friday on we're opening 2 territories in Texas, purchasing 2 territories in Texas.
That's amazing. Greg, we love you, man. Just want you to know, Greg, we're thinking about you. I mean, what a story. What a comeback story, right? To say 30 years of kind of just head in the sand to I've got partners, I've got businesses, I'm helping people get out of the rut that they're in. I am taking everything that God has given me and utilizing that to do better in other lives, including my own. Jeff, it's a story. It's an amazing story. I'm glad that you were able to tell it on the podcast because, listen, I will tell you guys, it is a story of triumph, and this is not only about his. It's about what you can do for you too. Now, if there's anybody listening to the podcast as we speak that needs help, by all means, reach out. Where do they reach out to again?
RTOrecovery.com.
RTOrecovery.com. And listen, you don't have to be an RTO. It is a name. He said that. It's just a name. But if you're an RTO, it makes it even better. If you're not, it doesn't matter. Reach out. Your sobriety matters because we need you here. We want you here. And you might be the next Jeff Smith. I don't know if there's going to be another one, but you might be the next one. So it's an amazing story, Jeff. You've done a lot. You've done some great work. I'm very glad that I met you. I know that you actually did a lot of the talking the first time we met. You said you came out of that shell and you said, hey, and guys, if you guys don't know Jeff, the next time that you're out, please stop by, say hello, shake his hand. There is a story there. If you don't have the opportunity to go to one of those places, where can they meet? Can they find you online? Where can they go to find you?
Yeah, I'm not super big on the socials.
No?
I'm kind of more of a lurker.
Then you're going to have to stalk the website at Hometown.
No, I mean, I have a Facebook. It's just my name. And then LinkedIn. I'm on LinkedIn too. Don't spend a lot of time. I do my networking face to face, kind of like we're doing right now. I feel much more comfortable in that environment, which is kind of ironic, given that my background's in IT. Right? You think I'd be behind a keyboard, and that's actually I'm actually quite introverted, which is why going back to the alcohol again brought me out of my shell. But the more time goes by, the more comfortable I get. The more I just like feeling that human connection, which is why I wanted to do this here too. You and I had talked about, doing it remotely, doing whatever. And I said, hey, there's a chance I might be coming to town.
No, hey, by all means. Listen, guys, if you guys want to talk to Jeff, find him on LinkedIn. Go to rtorecovery.com. Stop by one of his stores in either New York or PA, hometown RTO. I promise you, you will not be disappointed. I'm going to tell you guys, please make sure you subscribe, because these are the kind of things that we're talking about every single day, and we want to get that out to you. Go to the website, thertoshowpodcast.com, subscribe to the newsletter, take a look on there. If you want to be a sponsor, we still have some spots open. Get the newsletter, and I'm going to tell you guys, you will not be disappointed. Jeff, thank you so much for being on the show. An amazing story. I couldn't have said it any better myself on anything that you said. And the story is just amazing. Your belief has made me believe.
Good.
I just want you to know that.
Happy to hear that.
I'm going to tell you guys, as always, stories like this doesn't come your way often. You're going to see it on the RTO Show podcast. Get your collections low to get your sales high. Have a great one.